populist leaders in Boris Johnson and Donald Trump. And all the tricks that they used to become popular and to win elections and to lead their countries are now being tested in a very different way. It's not about partisan politics anymore. It's about plain war crisis leadership. And it's a very different thing. And what I've noticed with both Boris Johnson and with Donald Trump is an apparent inability to segue into being war leaders. They're still playing the old games of party politics. And Donald Trump in particular, I've known him a long time. I consider him to be a friend. But I've been watching these daily briefings with mounting horror, frankly, because this is not what the president should be doing. And you won't want me saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. The president of the United States right now is an incredibly important person in the world, and not least to Americans who are dying in their tens of thousands from a disease that we don't know much about yet. And all that's required from the president in those moments, and any world leader, frankly, is they've got to be calm, they've got to show authority, they have to be honest, they have to be accurate, entirely factual with what they're telling the people, and they have to have an ability to show empathy. And on almost every level of that, Donald Trump at the moment is failing the American people. He's turning these briefings into a self-aggrandizing, self-justifying, overly defensive, politically partisan, almost like a rally to him. Almost like what's more important is winning the election in November. No, it's not Donald Trump. What is more important right now is saving American lives. And I believe that the complacency that the American and British administrations showed in the first few weeks of this crisis has been extremely damaging to both countries' ability to deal with coronavirus. But it's not too late for them to now get a grip and actually make the attack on the virus their number one priority, not pumping themselves up, not telling us all day what a great job they're doing, but actually focusing on what matters, and that is human life.
Do you realize how badly you need to screw up to lose Piers Morgan? And yet the fact that he seems like a voice of reason relative to Trump is a testament to the extent to which Trump has failed in his response to this crisis. Now, Piers acknowledges Trump's desire to be known as a wartime president, most likely because presidents typically enjoy pretty significant approval rating bumps during times of war. George W. Bush had ratings as high as 91% after 9/11. And as we've come to learn, Trump has viewed this pandemic not through the lens of making sure that the right steps are taken to ensure that the most Americans survive, but of helping himself politically. From trying to artificially keep the number of cases low by preventing a cruise ship with sick Americans aboard from docking, to adding his name to the stimulus checks being sent out by the IRS, to using the daily press briefings as his de facto campaign rallies, this entire crisis has been handled with politics at the forefront. And yet the fact that Trump hasn't seen any significant increase in his approval ratings speaks volumes. Because while Trump's approval rating is 44% approved to 52% disapprove, and almost negligible 1-point uptick from last month, consider what some other approval ratings are looking like. According to the most recent polling, Maryland's governor's approval rating is at 84%, Ohio's governor is at 83%, Cuomo in New York is at 81%, California's Gavin Newsom is at 79%, Washington's Jay Inslee is at 74%, even Kentucky's Andy Beshear, who only eked out a win in November by a few thousand votes, has an 81% approval rating. So the fact that some of these governors have seen massive 20 to 30 point upward swings from their handling of the response should put into much clearer perspective the extent to which Trump has failed. A point made even more embarrassing by the fact that his entire handling of it was predicated on helping himself politically. Of course, if Trump wanted to help himself politically, all he had to do was his job. But he was so obsessed with protecting the stock market and battling Democrats that when the virus began spreading and the left began ramping up calls to take swift action, Trump's immediate reaction was to push back. And so he pretended that it wasn't real. He said that it was another Democrat hoax to take him down. He said it was contained. He said the cases would soon fall to zero. He said it was no different than the flu. He said it would go away with the warm weather. He lashed out at public health officials when they began sounding the alarms and spooking the stock market. We effectively lost the entire month of February while scientists and doctors and public health officials sounded 5-alarm fires and thousands upon thousands of Americans began contracting the virus, and yet still Trump hasn't implemented even close to what measures we need to protect ourselves. Still, we don't have even a fraction of the number of tests we need, despite the fact that Trump is throwing himself a parade that we've made nominal increases to testing. Still, we don't have enough personal protective equipment, despite the fact that Trump is claiming that we do. Still, we don't have enough ventilators, even though Trump has used the federal stockpile as a way to dole them out to vulnerable Republican politicians so he can eke out some political benefit for his party. The simple fact is that in his desperation to help himself politically, he's actually hurt himself more than anyone could have imagined. And yet, with that said, nothing will change. Trump will continue to use his daily press briefings as campaign rallies. He'll continue to point fingers at Obama and Biden and Democratic governors and the Chinese and Mexican migrants and the FDA. He'll continue to cast doubt on the efficacy of stay-at-home orders because they were imposed by Democrats. Because, like Pierce said, he doesn't actually know how to be a wartime leader that he's so desperate to be, he only knows how to be himself. A perpetual victim whose entire political identity is predicated on attacking his opponents or anyone whom he views as insufficiently loyal. And when people are dying, that's just not gonna cut it.